start by putting a poll up. I'm going to put 2 of them, but if you can take a second just to tell us what type of attendee you are. Are you a foster parent, a kinship or child-specific parent, a guardian, biological parent, an adoptive parent, or other? If you can click on that, that would be great. So we have an idea of who is on the call tonight or the training tonight.
I can't vote.
No, you're a panelist.
I'm like clicking, trying to get it to go.
Is this still up there? Okay. Okay, so it looks like we have a mix: foster parents, kinship, biological, adoptive, and other. I know we have a couple social workers that wanted to join in, and I'm so thankful for that. And then I'm going to just put one more poll up there so we have an idea of how many of you are currently either using IT, that's what we need tonight, either using IT or I'm doing it again, using OT or have used it in the past. So I'm going to put that one up now. So if you can fill that one out, that would be great. Whoops. Okay, so it's looking like we have a good mix. Looks like everybody has pretty much voted. So I'm going to end that and share those results with you. So it looks like we have a pretty decent mix of people who have used it in the past, or haven't used it. And that's helpful for Katie to know what your experience has been with OT. So that's it for polling for the night. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And I will be sitting here hopefully getting Katie so that we can see her as we go along.
All right, am I up? You're up? Okay.
Take away, Katie.
I was gonna say, maybe if you turned your video off, would mine come up or no? Somebody had posted, you've already made me a panelist, right? Because Ryan said participants more allow panelists to start videoed. I think you tried that, right? Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you. We just see your name.
We are in a webinar format instead of a meeting format. So I will play around with it and I'll see what we can do, but I'm going to let Katie take over from here.
Okay.
Katie.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So thanks for coming back. I was sorry I can't see you and you can't see me, but we'll make it work. So I'm an occupational therapist. I currently work at Cape Cod Hospital in an adult, actually, inpatient, outpatient psychiatric program. But my background has always been in pediatrics. So my goal is to really start a pediatric behavioral health program for the Cape and the islands, working with children that are in foster care, that have been adopted, that have born or have in utero exposure to substances, and just kids with random behaviors that are really having a difficult time in all areas of functioning. So I'm going to just peruse through this. This is kind of what we did the first night. We went through all the 5 senses. I know I'm going through quick. I'm just going to get to the here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a recap. The other night we talked about our 5 basic senses: the taste, touch, sound, smell, and sight. During sound, we focused on that moral reflex, that very primitive reflex that starts right at birth. And I wanted to just come back and think about that as we go through the interventions. Always look for flexion extension with breath patterns, because that is how trauma is released from the body. Trauma is stored in our pelvic floor, in our gut, and in our core. And as we go through some of these interventions, see if you can pinpoint where you see it and where you could add it, and always keep that in the back of your mind. Again, that's a primitive reflex that starts right from birth. I recently had a baby. She's 3 months old, and it's been so fascinating to actually see it hands-on and how it works from birth to adulthood. Mine is actually still intact as well. So how we usually test this is you make a loud sound at the, I wish you could see me, at the ears while they're laying supine, laying flat on their back. And you watch, you can see my whole body almost come up into this flexion, and then it comes back down and I have almost like a can't catch my breath. So we're going to look for that. We also went over the window of tolerance. I hope you guys were able to think of some self-care tasks that you enjoyed. A recap of window of tolerance is just understanding where you function at your best and how you can do these sensory strategies each day to keep you in that optimal level of function. We talked about the polyvagal theory, which is just fight, flight, freeze. We're going to go a little bit more in depth with that with some of these interventions. And then I always love the saying, your body keeps the score. Trauma to me is a very physical experience. A lot of trauma work is done talking about emotions or talking about what you went through. But really, if you neglect the physical and mostly the sensory component, you're missing a huge part of trauma work. And trauma starts right at birth. Giving birth is a trauma and going through birth is a trauma. There's just a positive outcome at the end that helps our brain reframe the traumas that we go through. Okay, so we're gonna start. Oh, I just wanna make sure, okay. We're gonna start with our 4 regulating senses. So how I list these is from proprioception is that first one, vestibular, interoception, and then neuroception. I've listed proprioception at the top and I've bolded it because, again, if you take nothing from this PowerPoint or from this lecture that I do, I hope it's that word, proprioception. And then you're going to work your way through each one. But proprioception is deep pressure, and that's what I really want you to remember throughout this. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to break down each of these regulating senses. I cannot see Kim anymore, and I can't see the chat. The chat doesn't seem to pop up. So Kim, if I start talking too fast or you need me to slow down, I'm going to keep my phone, and if I see you text me, then I'm going to know that I'm talking too fast. Because I get really into this. Okay, so the first sense we're going to go is we're going to start with neuroception and work our way up that way. So neuroception is really our social sense of safety. So in your frontal lobe, right in the top front part of your brain, and that red area, is mirror neurons. And they will look at another person and they will decide if that person is safe or not. And you'll make that decision subconsciously. You won't have any awareness of what you're making it. And then your body and your brain will take an action. So I can look across the room or look at the video and I'll see Kim, and my brain will decide if she is safe or not. And then it will want to do a set of actions. Those that have experienced trauma, abuse, and neglect, that sense is hardwired differently. It will start to perceive chaos in situations that are not safe as safe because they've thrived or they've developed in those situations. For example, domestic violence. If there's a lot of violence in the home, a child or a family member may continue to stay in that situation because to them, that's normal. Their brain developed in that normal sense. So they keep looking for those. There's also a lot of work and talk on this sense that people who have gone through trauma tend to put themselves back in those traumatic situations because, like I said, again, in other various traumas, they just want to go right back to it because that to them feels safe. The only real way to rewire this that I've had luck with is just really firm, concrete, repetitive boundaries. So really breaking down for kids like 1 to 3 rules of what an appropriate relationship should be like, and watching that and helping them learn to frame it in various other relationships. So we can see this sort of develop when we talk about co-regulation. So when a baby is connecting to its primary caregiver, if that attachment style is broken, if their needs are unmet, then this neuroception is going to get hardwired a little bit differently. So their understanding of relationships is just viewed maybe as that anxious attachment, the inability to connect, difficulties understanding emotions because they can't see themselves in their caregiver because their caregiver never gave them that feedback. It can be distant, or it can be that really secure attachment that we all hope for. I like these examples when I was kind of researching is it explains why a baby will coo at their caregiver but cry at a stranger, and why a toddler will enjoy their parents' embrace but view a hug as an assault. That word was really intense, I thought, but a baby doesn't understand. They're just very primitive, their brains. And so we're starting really, really young with this social sense of safety. Okay, so hard not to see everybody. Okay, interoception. So deep down, this is really how your internal organs will regulate your body. It really focuses on gut health, in my opinion. What you eat fuels your body and fuels right up to your brain. That bacteria, that healthy, that good, that bad, that bacteria in your gut will travel right up to your brain and shift your moods. So when we eat a lot of junk food, or if we know we have an allergy to some food, people with gluten allergies, right, they tend to feel lethargic, tired, irritable, and they stay stuck in that bad mood. Someone had mentioned too, their child was eating junk food a little bit before bed. This is a huge sense. They're going to sleep poorly and they're going to wake up in a difficult mood because their brain and their body are trying to work through that processed food. So offering that orange is not only essential to health, but also to their basic senses and how their mood will be affected. Also responsible for kidney health, temperature. So I should have had Kim do a poll for this one, but if your child wears gym shorts in the snow, this is this sense. They do, I mean, obviously they get the hypothermia, but they don't feel the cold like the rest of us do. Their body is just desensitized to it. Pain is in this one too. They always talk about how the delayed reaction, a child touching a hot stove, they don't feel it for that first couple seconds and you're yelling, get your hand off the stove, but they don't feel it because of that delayed response, that delayed interoception. This is really understanding, how do I feel? What am I feeling? And understanding when someone asks, well, what do you need? Sometimes these kids don't have no idea because they're not connected to their body. Their senses are just hardwired differently, so they don't understand what a racing heart means or what sadness is or what frustration is. Kim, she already said I could use her kids again. Reggie and I did a lot of this work as while we were moving and while we were wrestling, I had him try to verbalize emotion. So as we're getting that deep proprioception, that deep grounding work, I also want him to come up with labeling emotions and have him sort of tune into his body. He almost flies around like a Tasmanian devil in just an inability to feel his body. So when you ask him what he needs, is he hungry? He doesn't know. He wasn't able to express it, and so he would just get frustrated and never feel content in what his body was trying to tell him. So this is really huge, and this one often gets doesn't get seen as well or researched as much. It's really at the top of the occupational therapy research currently, and how we can start to label our emotions and connect them to what our internal organs are actually doing for us. Okay. So this is the vestibular sense. So this is a sense that's located in your inner ear. In your inner ear are 3 different canals. You can't see me, unfortunately, but it's when your head is upright and then when your head is down, and while your head is down, moving side to side. So those are 3 different canals. And in these canals, there's hair follicles and fluid. So these hair follicles are supposed to be processing the fluid and helping you understand how your body processes movement in the environment. If you've ever had vertigo or you got really dizzy, this is this sense. If you get sick just looking at a playground swing like me, this is this sense. If you crave roller coasters and love to flip upside down, or your kids love to flip upside down or are constantly jumping on trampolines, this is this sense. So as kids, we rough and tumble play. Hopefully we jump on trampolines, we're riding roller coasters, we're on swings all the time, we're really moving our body. So that fluid is constantly being processed. We're constantly able to understand and relate to our environment, hopefully. Then as adults or kids that didn't get the access to movement, we're usually are asked to sit in our chairs, work at cubicles, work at a desk. We're sitting down constantly and we're not moving. We're not flipping upside down. We're not rough and tumbling play. So that fluid actually drains from the ear and we're not able to process. So what you'll see too, if anyone ever gets sick in the car, or if you only get sick maybe when you're reading or texting on your phone, if you think about that, you're looking down at your phone and the world is moving around you and you're not able to visually process. Remember yesterday I said sensory is 85% sight. So you're not able to take in that and your ears are having to work overtime, and so it's causing you to get really dizzy or really sick and get nauseous, your stomach flips. So this is a really important and impactful sense for kids that have been through trauma because it's really movement based. And a lot of the times you can either see a kid really fearful of movement if they've lacked the ability to kind of get this play, or you'll see kids that constantly seek it out. They can never get enough. They constantly want to flip upside down. They want to be on roller coasters. They can never sit still. Asking a child with vestibular dysfunction to sit at a desk is honestly impossible. They'll fall out. Their legs will be bouncing. They can't focus on a task because their body doesn't understand how to stay in one place and then take on that higher executive functioning task. As adults, if anyone's ever had vertigo, what they do with occupational therapy is they put on these goggles almost over your eyes, and then they whip your head side to side to sort of move the crystals and adjust the. Okay, I'm sorry, Kim just texted me. I'm making sure I'm not talking too fast. They watch your eye movements and they see how you're processing that fluid, and they want to try to shift it from wherever it's stuck. Okay, so that is that sense. Oh, and what to do for this one, which we're going to talk about, but if you have a rocking chair on the psych center, on the inpatient side, we have a lot of rocking chairs. Those are easier tasks. If you have access to a sensory gym, what they usually start out with is linear movement, and then slow rotary, slow spinning, and then rapid rotary, really moving fast and having that movement sort of shift and process, and then you take it in. And what I like to do is use swings, but then incorporate emotions. So there is this rainbow lycra swing that has a blue, red, yellow, and green color. And as they move through each color, they're flipping upside down, and they have to label an emotion that they feel that correlates with each color. So you can really incorporate all sorts of movement into various sort of emotional discovery, we can call it. All right, that is that. And then my favorite is proprioception. So this is how your body relates to objects in space. This is the most impactful regulating sense that you can go through. The other day we talked about how when you trip over your foot or you hit your hand on the table, you knew it was there, but you don't understand why you tripped or why you hit your hand. So when we're in chronic stress, when we've gone through abuse and neglect, or all the things that we go through, even just the daily run-of-the-mill stressors that we go through each day, your brain will start to disconnect from your body, specifically starting with your external limbs. So it wants to work, it wants to keep the proximal, it wants to keep everything close, safe. You don't need your arms, your hands, or your legs to survive. So your brain will start to dissociate from those parts of your body. It's almost like they become numb. So with proprioception, you're reminding your brain, you're alerting your brain to really turn back on and connect your brain to your body. It's heavy work, it's lifting heavy objects, putting things down, picking things up, push and pull against the wall, jumping jacks. I say the more whole body proprioception that you can do, the more impactful it will be. The hand pushes, the wall pushes, all of those things are really great for kind of short-term proprioception, especially if you can only isolate one area of the body. Say you're sitting at your desk or your child's at school or things like that. One thing I always recommend is you cup your hands together. I usually have you do this with me, but if you cup your hands in, these are push-pull patterns, and you just kind of push your hands together and then you pull them out. And if you do that a couple times, you'll start to feel that kind of in your arms and your elbows and your shoulders, and you can kind of give moderate pressure. And then of course you want to pair it with breath. So you can keep it at your chest or you can hold it at your belly button. And I'm going to do this 3 times. I know you can't see me, but I'm going to inhale on the push in and exhale on the pull out. I can try to record some of these with Kim after, and we can send them to you so that way you can see this one in action. But you're going to push in and pull out and push in and pull out and push in and pull out. Right? So again, in those 3 breaths, you can already hear my voice change and hear how just 3 deeper breaths with a little bit of proprioception has enabled me to calm back down. We also talked about the Wilbarger brush, which I do have, and the massager. I talked about vibration. I don't know if you can hear that, but these are really great tools, little simple handheld tools. Again, I will send you these pictures during technology, because these are really great and simple tools that you can just provide a quick dose of proprioception to remind your body and remind your child's body to just calm down, reconnect, and tune in. There are a couple books. One of them that I really like is The Art of Roughhousing, that walks through a bunch of different wrestling moves. I always used to have Reggie and Jared wrestle each other because one, it took me out of it, but now not only are they both getting flexion, extension, breath, proprioception, vestibular, all the other senses, but they were now connecting to each other, and they didn't need me as much. They tended to kind of work each other up. I know Kim would always have to kind of pick up the pieces, but again, if you set boundaries, if you set set those neuroception rules right from the start and understand what the safety cues are, then you can kind of set the tone of how it will go. Okay, so proprioception, I cannot stress that one enough. Just those 4 types of attachments. So like we said, we're always hoping to get that secure, that confident, that give and take relationship in the secure. But these are those other types, that anxious and preoccupied, fearful and avoidant, dismissive and avoidant. And so sometimes if we know what our child's attachment style is, we can start to learn what they don't understand and how we can use ourselves to connect to them at their level and understand what they're trying to tell us based on their early experiences. Okay, so this is that give and take. So we can always sort of hopefully tune into the other person. It's called the attunement, the ability to sync up with another person. This can be really difficult if you're not grounded within yourself. You have to kind of know your own needs and your own window of tolerance that we talked about and how you can use that to your advantage. So if you're in a really stressed out place, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, and then your child comes at you with all their needs and their behaviors, it's going to be really hard to sort of co-regulate or get them to understand what's going on if your emotional state is off. If you're in a really good place, hopefully, which is the ideal, your emotions can actually ebb and flow with them. So if your child is really, really overwhelmed, they're screaming at you, but you come in with no language, or you come in really calm, they're going to take on some of your energy and you're going to take on some of theirs. So you can become really heightened really quick if they're bringing in all that energy. And then you can also kind of bring them down by using breath, again, taking away that language. We talked a lot about that on Tuesday, is that when kids go through that fight or flight, when they're in that stress mode and they blow the lid off the top of their brain, they blow off that frontal lobe, which is responsible for judgment, using coping skills, engagement, having a conversation, right? So that's all offline. They're coming from a very primitive reptilian part of their brain. So if you can use your body and your breath and take the words out of the discussion, you're going to watch them sort of calm down, unless they get really frustrated with you if you're not speaking at them. But if they're at that really higher level, then again, try to take the language out. Where I've seen this work the most too, honestly, is with adults in the psych center when they become really agitated or paranoid, flashbacks, PTSD. Attunement is so important, because if you're throwing all these tools and words at them, you're just going to heighten, really escalate them. And again, therapeutic use of self, that's kind of, I guess, an OT term, but it goes without saying for everybody. What you do with your body, your tone of voice, how you sit on the floor. If your child's on the floor and you're up higher to them, that's a threat. What we do with our bodies and how we smell, what we look like, can always be a subconscious trigger for kids that have gone through a lot of trauma. So what we do plays a huge role into how to bring them down through there. And this is so cool. So this next video is my very favorite attunement. It's Balavisex. I think there was an OT that was going to join us. I hope she's here. This is Balavisex. So this kind of crosses over between balance, auditory, vision, and exercise. And what you're going to see here is a room full of kids that are talking about how they're focusing better in school, how they're able to participate. But what this is rhythm and attunement. Rhythm is huge. If we think about all of our interactions, everything is rhythmic. The way that we walk, the way that we have a conversation, it's all a give and take, right? Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Conversations, you kind of respond and then someone else responds. If you're really comforted by ocean waves, that's very rhythmic. The ebb and flow of the wave, and it's bigger than you, makes you sort of sync up to it, attune to the waves, and brings that piece of calmness. So this is really cool. I think they don't know how much social emotional impact this simple exercise is. And what I love is they show this huge room of kids all synced up based on a sound, and then they can do it individually. So this is a tool I really like to use. This one's a little bit longer, but worth it.
This might look like a rendition of the performance Stomp.
No. I'm gonna give it a second to load. Don't even.
Stomp. On For the review, it's more like bounce. Actually, it's enhanced learning. A program called BalaVizX, a series of balance, auditory, vision exercises done with bean bags and racquetballs, sometimes while standing on a balance board.
It helps me a lot in school, getting better grades and stuff.
Atta girl.
This was the intent of Bill Hubert when he created the exercises over a decade ago, after discovering it helped his students focus and learn.
The entire mind-body system just integrates so that you can put together what had been disparate skills. Touch. The whole thing is the rhythm. That's what sets this apart from every other movement program.
The exercises get both sides of the brain communicating with each other. When you bounce a ball with the left hand and into the right, you use the right side of your brain and vice versa. You alternate or go behind the back. They work in rhythm.
We have balls on the desks, and through the day we do BalaVizX a little later if we want to be integrated again. It's just a
Okay, that was perfect to show. So yes, that rhythm, that timing, and I also forgot, when you are in a lot of stress, chronic stress, your right and left hemispheres actually disconnect from each other. So if you have a scrap piece of paper or a pen in front of you, and you can draw a infinity sign, we call it a lazy sleeping 8. At the end, when I ask questions, maybe Kim can set up a second poll and see if you can or cannot draw this. If you cannot, it means it's a clear description of your brains, your hemispheres aren't connected, and that you need more bilateral coordination. You need to cross midline, and you can use this tool to really activate those connections, fire more neurons into that synapse, and activate those parts of the brain that are turned off because of the stress that you're going through. This tool can get really hard too. So for older kids, if you have teens, you can do all these 4 steps where you bounce it, tap the leg, around the back, tap the leg, pass. And you can use up to 2 to 3 or 4 actually balls and bean bags. So it gets really intense, and it's all rhythmic, and it's all about connection. You have to tune in to the other person and connect to them without words to make this work. That one's really cool. Okay, so now we're going to play. I love to do these exercises in person. So I only have some videos and more of my descriptions, but we're gonna make it work because it is Zoom-tastic of time of the year. So the first one I'm going to show you is, we did talk a little bit about this yesterday, is that body sock. So I have this body sock too. This comes in an adult size. So if you love this and you think you need one, they have them on Amazon. So this is all proprioception. This is, so if your brain and your body is disconnected, this body sock creates a fun boundary. So it helps it tune in. Where are my arms? Where are my hands? Where are my legs? And then you can sort of play and flip and upside down. And this is called that body sock. I love this. Kids can play video games in this. They can sit in it all day. I sit in mine sometimes. Oh, I'm about to cry. My internet is messing up now too. No. Oh, phew. Sorry about the quality. I think it's my internet. So fun. Sorry that was a little bit blurry. Again, all of these I just pulled right off of YouTube too. So we all need that. OT is so fun. Okay, so I highly recommend those. Really simple, really easy. Again, kids can sit in them. It can be their safe place. It can be their cocoon. It can be a place they can go if they're in trouble, right? They can kind of get their frustration and their anger out in that safer body sock. Okay, So these I really like to demonstrate, but I can sort of verbalize them and it will be easier to go through that way. So peanut wrestle, if you're looking at that peanut ball, this is huge for that moral reflex. What I usually have kids do is they lay on their back and then they wrap their arms and their legs around the peanut ball, and then I have to try to rip it from them. But what I do is I make it this game. So I say, I bet you can't hold on to that ball. There's no way. I'm going to take it right from you. I'm even going to count how many seconds it takes. So we make it this competitive game, because when I do that, I'm activating their amygdala. I'm activating their emotional center, but I'm doing it in a fun way. And then if I know a child has been through trauma or in a situation that they couldn't escape, repetitive or chronic abuse, I always have them be the superhero. So I say, okay, this peanut ball is a puppy, or it is your friend, or this is someone that you have to save. So I can make it elaborate. They can be a superhero and they have to save someone. It could be something they're afraid of and they're protecting someone from it. And so they have to kind of think about that emotion, but we're not talking about it. We're just couple quick things to activate that thought, that flashback, that emotion, and then we're going to play it out. We're going to wrestle, right? Reflection, extension, we're doing breath, we're laughing, we're engaging, and I'm working those muscles. And when they come off of that tight flexion, typically they collapse into a full extension. So I'm using that trauma pattern, I'm activating it in a safe and playful way. So we're not always talking about what they've gone through, but their body is reliving it in a way that they can move it through their core, move it through their pelvic floor, and open and get that energy out. Popcorn kicks are really fun. I sometimes do these with a little bit of an older kids, but they kick back really hard, so watch out. So they will, a child will lay on their back, and they'll lift their legs sort of in the air, and so they're going to pop the yoga ball back to you. I start out really slow. If it's a younger kid, I just roll it on the floor and they're going to pop it back to me, because if you think about that, all of that, it's almost like a modified sit-up without the body coming up. It's just the legs. So I'm targeting that lower core and they're popping it back to me. And usually I'll start out to incorporate breath. They'll have to count. So they'll have to go pop, 1, pop, 2, and they're getting that flexion, extension, that breath. With Kim's kids, because they are a little bit more advanced, right? So all of this is graded. If the kid has trouble with motor planning or really understanding, connecting, moving their body, I start out very basic. With kids, Kim's kids, who are going to be the next ninja warriors, I will stand across the room and I will throw the ball as hard as I can, not really, but until I know that they can reach it, and I'm gonna have them kick it way farther back all the way across from me. So Jared's really good at this because his coordination is unreal. So he can pop it back and he needs a little bit more. And with Jared, he always has to tell me a story. So tell me something that happened at school that day, something that he felt went wrong. And then if he hates talking, he just has to kind of use his breath for me, and I have to hear him do the flexion, the inhale, exhale, when he does it for me, when he used to do it for me. So those are 2 really easy ones. You can also lay a child prone or on their tummy over a yoga ball, and you just sort of roll them back and forth, and then you put the pressure on their pelvis. And what it does is just kind of giving some feedback, really soft, slow, rhythmic feedback to that area of the body. I'm also incorporating that vestibular sense, that proprioception, and sometimes it'll just have kids open up. They can also, while they are prone, if they want this next step up, they can roll out on that ball with their hands. So they're doing that proprioception to their upper body, and then they're pulling themselves back in. They're kind of like that exercise, the walkouts or modified push-ups. So that is another great tool. On the peanut ball, I use those for smaller babies too. They make smaller peanut balls, and that's really good because they can sort of roll really slowly and do that tummy time on a peanut ball. Tummy time in general, right? All pediatricians recommend tummy time, not only for strength, but it's also a huge proprioception task. It's bilateral coordination, gross motor body awareness, fine motor coordination. So the more that we can really target in child, teenager, and adult's core and pelvic floor, the more work we're able to do. So those are with those. I mean, these are, we can get really creative, and they're easy to sort of purchase. A lot of people already have these if you did the exercise too. Okay, and now we're already here. So this is actually the last exercise before we'll take some questions. This is my very favorite. So I love to do this with a group of people. I can't believe I actually found this on YouTube. It's 2 girls doing the sock wrestle. So the goal of this game is to put on 2 socks, and you have to fight to get the socks off of the other person. And so again, as you're watching this video, look for that flexion extension, that breath through laughter, engagement. I think they might even be sisters, so they're getting that emotional component. And this one is really fun. So if you have siblings or you want to play with your child, I always recommend setting, again, 1, 2, 3 rules. No kicking, no biting, no hitting. And if that happens, obviously the game is over. This can also tend to really escalate a kid. It can get them into that hypoarousal, which is good. We want to get kids in that state. That is a sign that we are directly targeting their central nervous system. If a child is in that tantrum mode, if they're in that hyperarousal, that is the work that we want to do. We just have to be able to also have a calm down space and the ability to catch them before they're so far out of that window that they have a really hard time cooling down, and then it's just exhaustion for everyone. So let's watch this.
This, my friends, is sock wrestling. First to get a sock off.
Perfect. Okay, so that's a good example. Again, all their laughter, and they're not thinking about their stressors. They're not talking about it. They're just sort of playing and enjoying each other. So if you can think of any other things that you use or that you've seen, and you can tell me. I'd love to hear some other ones. But that is what I have. And so thank you. And I would love to have any questions. Let me see if I can pull up. I did have the chat up earlier, but I don't know where it went. I think I was. So if oh no, here we go. I'm not muted anymore and I have the chat back. Let me see all the things I missed. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, can you define flexion? I hope you got this, but yes, it's when your body comes in to itself. So it's like chest to knees, nose to knees, that's that flexion, and then you open up as the extension. Yeah. Oh, good, someone had some body socks. Pikachu onesie, yeah, onesies are great, right? All that good feedback. Oh, somebody already sock wrestles. Well, you rock. Yeah, it is a real thing. It's my favorite one. I love having, watching people do it. I learned it from a course too, a trauma course. I hope you can all hear. Okay, yeah. Q&A, oh, there's a Q&A too. Yes, okay, here's a great question. What do you recommend for improving hand movement, poor handwriting, coordination, and eating food? Proprioception, and proprioception. Especially any weight bearing on hands. So if I always was seeing a kid for difficulties with handwriting, it's telling me that their hand isn't developed enough or strong enough to either hold the pencil or to do that higher level writing task and then coordinating it all. So again, our brain will dissociate from parts that we don't need. So any sort of weight bearing on your upper extremity, push-ups, if they do puzzles, if they can lay over that yoga ball and weight bear on their hands and walk in and out. What else? Climbing, rock walls, like all, yes, rock climbing. Oh my gosh, we said that at the same time. Yes, any sort of things with proprioception, heavy muscle. I always used to tell people to have kids rearrange their living room. So push and pull that couch or move whatever objects they can because they need that full weight bearing through their arms. Okay, let me come back to the chat. Yes, the cool down period is something that I often neglect. That's a really important part. At Spalding, actually, if anyone's ever been to Spalding on the Cape, my friend Katie works there. She created a whole room. So a cool down room should have really low lights, things that are soft and things that sort of set up the environment that wants to calm down that nervous system. So when we activate the various parts of their nervous system, it's really difficult to bring them back down because they're so used to running at that high pace. And so anything we can do to set up the environment, soft lights, soft cushions, things that we can squish with, things that provide deep pressure, and take away anything that can cause like an increase in stimuli in the environment. But it really kind of depends on the kid as well, because sometimes beanbags, they'll want to fight and throw them. So sometimes the room has to be empty. Other times going to the bedroom, providing deep pressure or squeezes helps down with the cool down. And always remind them that that's going to be part of the play, is that there's going to be a cool down. After we get to this fun play, we really need to tune into our breath. We really need to calm our bodies back down so we can keep going throughout our day. Are there any OT trauma therapy locations in Worcester Central Mass area? Not that I am familiar with at this time. I did talk to a group in Worcester, and I had connected with that OT, but they were not trauma trained, and I haven't heard of a specific person in Worcester, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means I'm not fully aware of them. What I always recommend is calling your insurance provider and seeing what OTs they are, and then connecting with the OTs and see if they are trauma trained, and if they're willing to work on trauma. So I think someone had mentioned before is they saw OT, but they weren't familiar with sensory processing. So always ask, because I think every single person needs sensory work. There's nothing, we all need it from birth to adulthood. Everyone has different sensory needs and they change throughout the day. So if you can understand them and really dig deeper into what your sensory processing is, then it helps you overall. But children of trauma, their whole body is rewired. They are being asked to function in a world that doesn't suit their needs. And so having someone who understands and can help them through that is really, really important, especially coming from an OT perspective, because our focus is what's important to the client. We have no sort of protocols. It's honestly always client-centered. And so that's really, really important in trauma work, and help through there. Okay. Yeah, wheelbarrows, that's a great one. Because you don't need any equipment for that. More wheelbarrows, the better. If they can wheelbarrow up the stairs, wheelbarrow around the house, if they can do chores while they wheelbarrow, that's a good one. I also don't know anyone in the Taunton area. Sorry. Kim, we should make a list of providers that we know do this besides just me. I know people on the Cape. I know a couple people on the Cape. That's it. Okay, okay. Our 3-year-old son, fetal alcohol syndrome, never hungry, doesn't seem to feel temperature, and no, yes, those are all interoception issues on the nose. Yes. So he said son, yes. He is probably so disconnected from his body. The more work, so there is reflex work. So primitive reflexes, there are more than just the Moro reflex. There are HTNR, STNR, the Galant reflex. And so what you want to do with him is provide feedback to his gut. You can have him slither like a snake. So he has to go on his belly and slither around to kind of collect items. So sometimes I like to hide puzzle pieces like around the house, and they have to go on their bellies to find them and then put them in the puzzle. It just kind of creates a start and an end to a task. I like to use scooter boards if they have a skateboard at all too. If he's 3 years old, I mean, maybe, but anything that provides deep pressure to the pelvic floor. So he's so disconnected from his gut. It's not even just external, it's all the way internal. And food is a really tough one for me. I have always trouble working with kids who won't eat, but the more you can do with food play and taking out that you have to eat. I mean, of course he doesn't really need to eat, but if you can make it messy play, fun play, and change the way maybe he views food, if that will help. And temperature too is really just, that's one of those concrete things, like this is hot, this is cold. You don't feel it, but if you don't get your hand off, right, it's gonna hurt. Or if you don't wear a coat in the wintertime, it will hurt in time. So just really sort of setting those firm boundaries, unfortunately, but that will help rewire the brain and help tell them that I may not feel it, but these are the social norms that I have to keep up with. Okay. Can you talk about a sensory diet morning routine for kids with deficit? Yes, please don't hate me for this. I'm a new mom, so I totally feel like I need to rechange all the things I used to offer. But if you can get your kid to a playground before school, that's huge. So if they can rough and tumble play on a playground and get those proprioceptive and vestibular systems activated, you're going to set them up for a much more successful day. If that's not an option, what can you do for heavy work during the day? Do you need to get your kids a little bit more activated with jumping jacks or push-ups, right, as a part of their morning routine to get them sort of going and more able to sit and tolerate the day? Some kids really like squishes. There's morning squishes where you wrap up in the comforter of the bed, you roll them up like a burrito, and then you, I would sometimes sit on Kim's kids, or you just sort of push into them and give them that deep, deep feedback, because you're tuning their brain into their body after sleep and knowing them, okay, so you're a little fuzzy, let's wake up your body, let's wake up your brain and get you ready to take on the day. And then hopefully they get those breaks throughout school when kids were going to school and throughout the day at home, just reminding them each couple minutes, each hour to really tune back into their brain and body. Yes, Love Me and Feed Me. I think you had recommended that. And then there was someone else had recommended something for me. I did write it down in my notes. Something else too, but yes, recommended Love Me, Feed Me for eating issues. I like that. I took a SOS fitting course as well. If that's something that you're interested in, you can look that up. It's all about playing with colors of food and getting them to sort of grade into different textures by using colors and familiar foods. Ooh, I'm gonna look that up tonight. I'm not gonna forget. Oh, great.
Katie, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I don't know if anybody else has experienced anything like this, but so a little bit about my background. So you all know I've talked about what I do. So I am working full-time from home. I have 4 kids at home, 2 13-year-olds and 2 8-year-olds. And it's obviously been stressful trying to balance it all. And one of the things that I've noticed for me is I feel like my personal bubble has grown. Like I don't want people near me. I don't want them to touch me. And my littlest one is very affectionate. She loves to snuggle. She's constantly coming up to me and rubbing my arm. And I don't know, like I know it's definitely stress related, because I feel like anytime I get stressed, I need that space. So are there things that we as adults can do that can help us with some of the sensory issues that we might have, especially, you know, so many of us deal with kids who have trauma. So they're hitting, they're kicking, they're biting, they're pulling our hair, and we end up with our own set of, you know, our own PTSD. So is there things you recommend for adults? You know, most of us aren't going to go wrap ourselves up like a burrito and have somebody sit on us, but
You should.
that we should do that, but similar types of things that we can do for us to help with our sensory issues and our stress levels.
Yes, totally. Yes. So understanding, right, when you're going to reach that limit. So if you are already feeling it and knowing that you can take the space, if you can, that would be great. Baths, if any adults are into, some people hate baths, but a bubble bath. So what you're doing with your body is you're making it weightless. You're taking off the feedback and you're sitting in something that kind of takes the gravity, takes the environment off of you. So if you are a bath person, I always recommend that. And hopefully you get some alone time. But again, checking in with your window of tolerance. When do you start to feel yourself getting it? How can you take those couple deep breaths if you can escape the situation and calm your own body down? Any sort of deep breathing. And you can squeeze yourself. You take your hand and just sort of squeeze your arms and pair it with breath. Again, proprioception is really the quickest way that you can calm an anxious or heightened nervous system. So if you're adverse to touch, or if you just have one more hug or one more tap on the shoulder, you're going to explode. It's because you just need some proprioception. So whatever, again, someone just mentioned a weighted blanket. Yes. Wall pushes for you. All the activities that kids do, I mean, adults need to be doing them, but again, sometimes it comes off as silly, so we don't do them. Yoga, pairing that with breath, that downward dog, right? All of that proprioception to your arms and your legs. A lot of people say they like to read. Reading is great, but it sometimes zones you out. It doesn't give you that deep pressure, but sometimes you just need that bit of distraction. Getting lost in a book will calm your mind. So whatever you kind of need, so whatever works for you, and just giving yourself that time. I think everyone's doing 5 different jobs at once. They're parents, they're teachers, they're working, they're cooking, they're cleaning. So you really now more than ever need to give yourself that time of what self-care means to you. That can be any sort of arena, and making that part of your routine and making that really, really important to the success of your family and yourself, is that you deserve just as much of this work, honestly, as your kids do.
Great, thank you.
Welcome. I wish I could see everybody too. This one was harder than yesterday a little bit, because I didn't get my co-regulation from the group.
Well, and that's, that's a great feedback too, and I'd love the feedback from participants too as to if they liked the other format better, slightly different. The co-regulation is definitely huge. I know we all probably see that. Just to share a little more, one of the things my kids have been doing that is really driving me up a wall is anytime I go into my room to make a work call, I come out to a food mess in the kitchen.
Ooh.
Soda spilled, juice spilled, popsicles melting on the counter. And I got upset this morning because I came down again and there was a huge mess. And my 8-year-old Reggie, who Katie has talked about, could not handle me getting mad. And so his stress level went way up through the roof, to the fact he, took his arm and threw stuff off the counter and broke some things. So I think that piece is so important to remember. But for parents, I know it's so hard for all of us to try to remember that piece of it. We can't calm a dysregulated child if we're not calm. And, I think that's so important, especially now. And so I just want to touch on, we're trying to be there to support all of you guys. So if you need help, if you just need a listening ear, we're there for you. But the Rise Above Foundation, which does a lot of great things for foster kids, is running they're calling it Sit Down to Rise Above. I'm trying to read it as I'm talking to you. They're doing mindfulness sessions. So they have one next week, Tuesday, May 19th. They also have one on Wednesday for social workers. They have one for teens, and they have one for young adults who have experienced foster care. So I will email that over to all of you guys who have participated, but that's another thing that might be really helpful for you during this time, to help with some of the stress that I know we're all experiencing during this crazy shutdown that we're in right now. Any other questions for Katie before we call it a night?
That did sound amazing, yeah.
Yeah, I think it sounds really good. They're a great agency. They're fantastic. They've been donating Chromebooks to foster kids who might need them. They've been also donating arts and crafts supplies, all sorts of different things. So if there are things that you feel like you need because of, even more so because of the kids being home all the time, touch base with your social worker. They can put in a request from Rise Above to get some assistance, and they're phenomenal. They've given people money towards electric dirt bikes and playground equipment. So definitely reach out to them if there's something that you need.
Awesome. I have not heard of the Waldorf education, but I just Googled it as Kim was talking, and that sounds fantastic. I'm going to look into that more. Oh, bye Lisa. What about sensory equipment for the house? That's a good Kim question.
So as far as Rise Above goes, yes, they will help out with those things. There are also other ways for foster kids to get different things like that. And there are times too, I know that this can be harder with Mass Health, but there's certain items, I think Katie can probably speak to this a little bit, that you can get prescriptions for. But I know that Rise Above is really good about donating different things, like giving you money to go buy a body sock or a weighted blanket. And then there's also, I'll email it out to you because I can't remember if it's the One Fund Dream. No, it's not the Wonder Fund, but the Wonder Fund also does different things like that, and that goes through your social worker. But then there's another one that's One Simple Wish, I think it might be. So I'll email those to you as well. but those are there's some different, either the Wonder Fund or Rise Above, they can help out with some of that sensory equipment for the house. And some of it, you know, like Katie was saying, can be stuff that you have already. You know, my kids used to love, like she said, they used to love being wrapped up like burritos. So we would just take a soft blanket and wrap them up super, super tight so they'd stick their arms down. And I would say, come on, I'm wrapping you up like a burrito. You know, there's all sorts of cool things online that you can get. But definitely if there's things that you feel like you could benefit from, if you want to reach out to me individually, I can direct you in the right way for getting some assistance.
Yeah, I like Kim's point too, is a lot of the items we already have in our home can be used for sensory tools. So not just blankets too, but pillows, couches, chairs, tables, under tables, making forts, a lot of other options. You just sort of have to think outside the box. But yes, some of like the Lycra equipment, everybody needs a body sock or a Lycra swing, and then something to hang a swing from in their house. But.
And I know you guys wanted to see my sensory gym, but it was not, we had a little bit of a flooding issue down there recently, so we haven't fully put it back together, but I will, once I put it back together, I'll send you some pictures. But I have known foster or adoptive
Oh yeah, we lost you, Kim. Come back to us. No sound. Oh.
They had higher ceilings in their house, but they, I hope you can hear me.
Now we can.
Oh, now you can. Okay. They had like an 8-foot trampoline in their house. They had higher ceilings and they put it right in their living room. I know someone that put a rock climbing wall in their kids' bedroom, you know, and it wasn't huge. It just was enough to go up for the kids to climb when they needed that. So there's a lot of good ideas. I think that one of the things that I like to tell people is, I think for me personally, with the kids that I have, my idea of what I wanted my house to look like kind of went out the window. So, you know, we've had different things in the middle of the room that need to be where the kids can see them so that they're not, you know, if you put the beanbag away, that's their crash pad, and they're not seeing it, they don't remember that it's tucked away in the other room. So we've had different stages in our home where, you know, we've had punching bags right in the middle of the living room or a swing hanging from the door jamb. So sometimes those things you need to bring those in where the kids can see them so that they can take advantage of them. I recently bought this one I could probably show you, but I thought it was small. It was a swing that's kind of shaped, we call it the acorn because it looks like it's shaped like an acorn. I got it from Walmart and it looked like the stand was not very big, and we set it up and it took over the entire living room. So we had that in the living room for probably 2 weeks before I decided I was moving it. So sometimes, you know, we have to change what our expectations are with the kids that we have, and what the expectations for what we want our house to look like, or you know, what things like going to the parade. I remember working with a family one time and the child could not handle loud noises and they were devastated because they couldn't go to the parade. But every time they went to any type of parade, it was a major meltdown. So, you know, sometimes we have to adjust what our expectations are with the kids that we work with. Anybody have anything else? All right. Katie and I are going to we're working on the technology piece. We're hoping to be able to record these without audio and visual problems. So with MSPCC, we're trying to get a bunch of trainings recorded so that we can have a library for all of you. So if there's any suggestions that you have about trainings that you would like to see, please feel free to reach out to me. We're happy to bring in what you guys feel you need. Well, I hope everybody has a great night.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. So appreciative. This is my bedtime now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you soon, hopefully.
Yes. Bye everyone.
Take care.